Okay, so here's a video on how to write an equation and then also how to get it in ax plus byc form. This is called standard form. And again, it all comes from printing actually historically. Right now, we have computers, right? So like typing this on a computer is actually super easy. We have equation editors, life is great. But if you think historically, they had typeset. Like a book would be like putting little metal things and putting black ink on it and pushing paper on it. Like they used to have the printing of newspapers. So you can imagine when they first started printing math books, fractions would have been a major issue. And so instead of accepting this answer, if this was the correct answer, what they would do is have students write it in standard form where fractions weren't allowed. And that way the answers could be printed in the text. So if this was the correct answer, students would have to look and be like, ooh, fractions are bad. We don't want them. So the common denominator of 2 and 3 is 6. So what they would have done is they would have scaled everything up by 6. And what that would do is get rid of the fractions. So 6 times y would be 6y. Half of 6 is 3. Or if you remember canceling, 2 goes in there once, 2 goes in there 3. 3 times 1 is x, or just half of 6 is 3. Plus, same thing, you can even use a calculator, 2/3 times 6 if you want to, but again, 3 goes into 6 twice, 2 times 2 is 4, or you could get 12 and divide by 3, but you're going to get the 4. And the beautiful thing about that is now we have no fractions. But again, this is kind of loosey-goosey if we let people write it in any order, like maybe an x and a y and a 4 or -4, you know, whatever. So we used to force people to do, you know, x first, then y, and then the answer over here. So to get, again, anytime there's adding or subtracting a problem, you got to use add and subtract. Dividing doesn't help you. So to get rid of a positive, you either need a negative or subtract. So I get -3x because they want that first. And then that's a positive, so plus 6y equals 4. And so now I have it in the beautiful form that they want. And so you can think about, you know, this would be much easier for them to typeset when they had to sit there and take like a -3 little thing and an x thing and a plus thing and a 6 thing and a y thing and an equal thing and a 4 thing and like lay them all in a tray and put ink on it and like run it through a printing press. So that's kind of where that comes from. Not such a big deal anymore, but back in the day that was a big deal. Okay. So let's take a problem and let's try to follow this through. So first of all, how do you find an equation of line? It's a 3-step process. Number 1 is you need your rate, which is your slope. Because if you don't know how it's growing, you don't know the rate, you have no idea. All right. And then, sorry about that. And then the next thing you need to know is the starting amount. Like what is your y-intercept, okay? So this is your rate, right? So slope, another word for rate, and this is your starting amount. All right, and then down here, this is when you kind of fill in the blank. So y equals, you put your slope here, and then plus your y-intercept or whatever. Usually we use m for slope and b here. And again, b might be positive or negative or whatever. All right, so slope is always first. I like to get slope by making an input-output chart. So it makes more sense. Input of 3, output of 4, and then input of 5 and 7. And so the rate of growth, the change in y, is how it changes on the y-axis. So that went, what, up by 3? And then you divide it by the change in x, because remember, rise is your y-axis, run is your x. So this went by that. This one, it looks like what? It went up by 8. So from there to there is a distance of 8. Think of -3 degrees to +5. It went up 8 degrees. So +8. And so my slope, it doesn't simplify, so my slope is 3/8. In high school, you might have learned y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is great, except if you never remember it the rest of your life, it doesn't serve you well. So like knowing change in y over change of x, I think is nice. If you're going to do this formula from high school and you actually remember it and you can do it correctly, you start with 7 and you subtract the 4. And then if you started over here, you got to start at the x. 5, now be careful, 5 minus this number, so minus a -3. You have that double negative going on, which makes a positive, so you get 3/8, and so that's your slope. So either way, somehow you got to get slope, because that is your rate. Okay, now we have to know where it starts at, so now we need the y-intercept. And the way you can always do this is sub in 3 out of 4. and it always works, so you don't have to worry that it's not going to work. So you're just going to sub in 3 out of 4. So what do you know? Well, x is your input to your function, y is your output to a function, and your slope, excuse me, is your rate. So you kind of know all of these. You know your slope, you know your input, your output, and in fact, you know 2 inputs here. You have an input with an output with output. So I'm just going to pick one of them. So I'm going to pick 5 and 7. So my x is my input, that's 5, and my output at that is 7. And my rate, which is the first thing we did, was my slope, which is 3/8, and then plus b. So now I'm going to solve for b. We're going to use a little algebra to solve for b. And again, I know we have fractions here. I'm going to put a 1 under here. And again, if you don't know how to do fractions, okay, where's my calculator at? So we can use a fraction key on a calculator. So if I have, I can do 3, I'll just do it this way, it's faster, 3/8, and then times what, 5, and that's not really a fraction. And I get this decimal. I'm going to convert it to a fraction. So let's see. This key is fraction to decimal. If you look there, it says F to D. So I'm going to hit shift and then that. And then I get 15/8. Okay, and then again, to undo adding, you always have to do subtracting or, negative or something here, no division. So then I'm going to take 7 minus 15/8. So I'm going to take 7, type in my 7, minus 15/8. And again, you can use your fraction key if you want. I just do it this way. And then I'm going to convert, so shift it into a fraction. And I get 41/8. So B is 41/8. Okay. Now, if you want to do it on a graphing calculator, if you hit alpha and then y equals, that's going to convert it into a fraction. So if you have a graphing calculator, I could do 3/8. So 3, and then hit my alpha key, and then up here, and you see how it gives me the fraction menu? I'm going to put my lighter on. Sorry about that. Sometimes shows up a little better. Maybe, maybe not. So then I'm going to do 3, hit enter, and then 8, and then that makes that a fractions. And then I'm going to do times 5. So then it's in fraction form, so then it gives me an answer in fraction form. Same thing here, if I want to do 7 minus 5/8, I can do 7 minus 5 alpha, and then this guy right there. And then it was what? Minus, oops, shoot, it was 15 alpha, that, and then what, 8s. And then it will do fractions for you. So then you don't have to convert. On this one, if you want to convert, like what did we have here? I don't know, like if I don't use my fraction key, so I use 3 and just the fraction key, put in parentheses if you're doing that with fractions, 3/8, and I do times 5. If on this calculator, if it gives you a decimal, you go to math, let me do that again. You go to math, and then the first one, enter, and it doesn't like it because I did it twice, so let me do it again. So, clear. Too many buttons. What do we have? 3/8 times 5, is that right? Yeah. So 3/8, and then do times 5, enter, and then go to math, and see how it says convert to fraction, hit enter, and you get 15/8. And again, you can get a graphing calculator on your cell phone. All right. So what do we have? Well, we have the 2 pieces we need. From up here, we know that slope is 3/8, which is our rate. And we know that our starting amount, or our y-intercept, is 41/8, okay? And so I'm just going to take that paper, and we're going to fill in the blanks. So y equals, your rate always goes by x, and that should make sense because if you make $10 an hour, you don't just have 10. You have 10 times 1 hour, 10 times 2 hours, 10 times 3, 10 times 4. So anytime you have a rate, which is what your slope is, you have to have it times a variable for like it to, like if you drive 60 miles per hour, you'd have to multiply by how many hours you drive. A rate has to have something with it. And then plus your y-intercept is your starting amount. Okay, that's kind of like a one-time expense, in business. It's like a one-time deal. Now, my math lab might say, yeah, this is ugly, sorry. So they might want it in what we call standard form. Right now, it's in y-intercept form, or slope-intercept form, because you have your slope and your intercept. But again, fractions get ugly, and so historically people have liked nicer numbers. So what we're going to do is we see that 8 and a common denominator is 8. You could use 16, but you don't need to. It's too big. So I'm just going to scale everything up by 8. So if I make everything 8 times bigger, those cancel, I get a 3. And again, you can take 3 times 8, 24 divided by 8 and get 3. So you don't have to cancel if you don't want to. Plus, and again, 8 times, or divide by that is 41. And again, you could take 41 times 8, divide by 8. You're still going to get 41. Not quite there because, again, it's not in a pretty order of x's, then y's, then an answer. So, again, there's adding here. Division does you no good. So we're going to subtract to get rid of that negative 3x. So negative 3x plus 8y equals 41. Woo! That's a lot of work, but it's so beautiful, right? So if I wanted to typeset this, I could just do this. And now some of you are like, well, we have calculators now, so who cares? But, you know, historically, it's kind of been a thing. All right. So hopefully that helps. We will work more on this in class. Have a great day.